Welcome to the Splinternet and the Death of Globalization, Part Three, in which we're once again going to to have a wide-ranging exploration, and a lot of that has been my apologies because I'm more or less recovering, and but in this session we're actually going to look at Venezuela. And we're going to look a lot more at the issues of the Splinternet itself,
Mm,
okay,
mm.
and the implications of that. Um, um, Meticulous Prime, welcome. Thank you for coming. We're going to change the dynamic a little bit today. I'll be the one asking the questions, and so welcome. How are you? And what are you bringing to the session today?
That's a great an adventure now to flip the tables around a little bit. Um, the the world, my thing is global domestic politics. That's how I like to look at the world, and when doing that, it requires a simultaneity uh, of perspectives on what's happening politically, what's happening economically, what's happening militarily, and what's happening culturally. And in an effort to sort of grasp a specific phenomenon through those lenses at the same time, um, one tends to end up being a structuralist. In just for the purpose, for the sake of efficiency, because otherwise you start getting lost in specificities, and when you get lost in data, you can't really have the larger picture, the bigger picture.
Okay, so basically, your method of global domestic politics is to take those issues of culture, politics,
With the three aspects.
economy,
Hmm.
culture, yeah, all of that, and look at the structural patterns within them.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. So with with regard to, because I'm really curious because I know that you have a depth of knowledge about Venezuela and anybody who has been looking at, or anybody who studied the history of Venezuela would know that from about the early 20th century, Venezuela was one of the world's second largest oil exporter,
Exactly. Hmm.
after the United States, but with greater oil reserves than than the United States.
Hmm.
And uh, this structural reality hasn't changed. And a lot of that oil was by a place called Lake Maracaibo,
Hmm.
and so on, and and now on the other side of this deep reserve of oil comes Guyana, which forms part of the same geological structure, and they are now pumping out the oil on the other side. And
Yes.
so and then so when Trump came with what he came, I'm beginning to. I'd like to have your perspective on one, what's driving this conflict.
Mm. So, all in all, the the initial question that I ask myself when I look at a conflict formation is, what is this actor a part of? And what is Venezuela a part of? We had in one of our previous sessions a conversation about um, Venezuela historically being a part of this Latin American, um, could we say, tradition, historical of emancipation that you, thankfully for my own understanding, also rooted in Haiti's precedent, because I had acquired the habit of looking at Venezuela through the Bolivarian lens. And you sort of just ever so gently place and that there is a streak of resistance in how Latin America uh, and the Caribbean react to the U.S. preponderance over the region, which famously was anchored deeply in the Monroe Doctrine. And another aspect of how I think about these things is always in the framework of emancipating my own thinking from the way I was educated slash indoctrinated in academia. You see, looking at the relation between the U.S. and Latin America is always within the framework, to some extent, for IR scholars, of um, the operational um, operational functionality of the Monroe Doctrine. Are
Okay.
they right?
So, yeah. So
So,
I'm gonna have to step back and ask you to give some context on what the Monroe Doctrine is,
oh,
uh,
let me see. Let me
and
see if I. Mhm.
how that work, how that, but really more a structural and functional understanding rather than necessarily a historical one. So what it does, or what how it's historically behaved, rather than the details of its history.
Okay. Okay. So I think the key words that come to mind here is spheres of interest,
Hmm.
of the structural perspective is uh, the two keywords come to my mind: spheres of interest and power differentials. The United States in America from the end of the 19th century begin having an imprint on the planet that is much, much larger than its immediate um, how did I word the beginning of my sentence? But which much larger than where it stands geographically. So they expand and extend their tentacles. I'm hesitant to use that word because of all the associations it creates in people's minds, but it it's suction tentacles in terms of what it extracts from the world. But the end of the 19th century, the decision is made in U.S. Congress and in the U.S. political doctrinary system that they have to exclude
Hmm.
coming out of competition with France and Spain in the previous century. They
Hmm.
have to exclude anyone, including the Germans, from uh, expressing any kinds of cooperative interests with the Latin American countries that are increasingly becoming independent or self-governed or uh, uh, untied from Spain, Portugal, and Western powers. And the U.S. decides to communicate to other powers in the world that have the maritime capacity to reach that region, uh,
Hmm.
that this region is out of bounds for you. And that is, in a nutshell, the purpose and the function of that statement in the U.S. foreign policy doctrine. It is to maintain a monopoly over that region and to state it very explicitly, excluding Germany, excluding France, excluding Spain and other powers, including Japan, which from the Pacific might express some interests in that region as it industrializes. Um,
Well,
so,
well, I just
mm,
at that point,
Russia and
um,
Japan,
there,
sorry.
no, but also at that point there was a Chinese scholar called Kang Yu,
Hmm.
who was a Confucian scholar who was trying to modernize China,
Hmm.
right? Because
Hmm.
that was its in that period they were trying to recreate a new China, and his thing was that the Chinese needed South American colonies to have access to the resources.
This is what I mean by indoctrination instead of education. This did not happen in my curriculum in academia. You see,
Hmm.
so you've just filled me in with new threads to pick up. and I really wasn't familiar with it. Could you spell the name for me?
Kang Wei. It's Kang U depending YU Wei WEI.
Oh, look at this. Chinese political thinker, reformer, late Qing dynasty. Thank you. See, I absolutely new information for me, but it would make perfect sense. It
Yeah.
would make perfect sense.
And the reason why I was bringing it in is just to give context on why the United States might take that position.
Mm. You see, and the list of countries that I listed were the Eurocentric educated minds list, right? France, Spain, Portugal, United Kingdom. Basically, the only
Japan,
Japan, of course,
that's
yes.
why you have significant Japanese populations in Southern America.
On the Pacific side, definitely
Yeah,
of the continent, yeah.
even
Um,
as far as Brazil, actually.
and yes, doesn't wasn't it? Let me think, not say anything silly.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to remember a case, but the, it'll come to
Okay.
me probably. But
Okay.
where's Japan's biggest population outside of Japan? Isn't it?
I don't. I couldn't answer that.
You see, I'll have to fact check that, but I do think it is. It might be Brazil. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Or Peru. I will check. I will check. Anyhow, so
Okay.
when it comes to the Monroe Doctrine, I think that it's relevant in the context of this Venezuela conversation. I
Mm-hmm.
think that what has happened now is an aggressive appraisal of that doctrine within
Mm-hmm.
the Trump white supremacist. And I don't say this in a flippant way. I say this in a factual way. We're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with a Department of War mentality, with the Department of Supremacy. What is the philosophy of warfare? It is the philosophy of conquest and submission. War is about victory, and
Mm-hmm.
war is about supremacy. Winning isn't everything. Winning is the only thing in the mind that is axed and directed and geared towards war. And
Mm-hmm.
when you combine that with discourses like African countries are shithole countries, I quote, why can't the migrants coming to the US look more like Norwegian people? Uh, all of these, uh, it's not even a dog whistle, it's a train horn. The way
Mm-hmm.
these people in power at the moment in the White House talk. We have a White House entrenched in a white supremacist and a practical militarist supremacist discourse. It's just the way it is. And when these people look at the regions of the world, you have a prediction out there uh, as a clip where you predict that Africa is going to be reinvaded. Um, the Sahel region will be the gateway to
Mm-hmm.
the heart. Well, I'm just going to call it the heartland of the continent, which is the
Mm-hmm.
sub-Saharan region. Not that I've picked that up anywhere, but might as well call it that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the sub-Saharan region extending all the way from today Niger with the yellow cake resources they have, all the way to Congo with the tactical minerals that they have on one hand, and on the other hand, within the Monroe Doctrine, the Latin American riches that are uh, the stuff of European wealth, the stuff of entrenched European wealth, the silver mines, the different rare earths that are needed for the Tesla electro vehicles, and I can't remember the exact quote, but just to illustrate, we have uh, Elon Musk's statement. I think it must have been 2018, but I don't remember the exact date. But I remember the quote, the tweet, where he tweeted that you better get used to it or something to that effect. We will coup. I think he was talking about Bolivia. We will coup whoever the hell we want to coup. Get used to it. That was in the context of securing, pardon me?
No, no, no. I'm listening. I'm listening. I said, okay. Yeah.
Right, that was in
Yeah.
the context of sort of just telling it to people's faces, cash, that the approach resource access
Hmm.
is brazenly and and unapologetically in full disregard of self determination, of self governance, of territorial autonomy. And this is who is in charge of the most powerful military apparatus on planet Earth, with more than 800 billion, 900 billion US dollars annually for military hardware. Uh, uh, Placed into the hands of white supremacists, militarists, um, racist in their actions, not in my imputation, in their actions and in their stances, uh, government.
Yeah.
So this is what we have.
Okay.
Uh,
So if I want to just pull back, because basically what you're saying is that the United States was saying with the Monroe Doctrine is that, look, this region is our region, right?
Finished. End of
The
the discussion.
Americas, yeah, these, whether it's on the Pacific side or it's on the Atlantic side,
Hmm.
this region of Latin America is our region.
Yes.
And then what you're saying is that this doctrine has now basically been extended to at least the western coast of Africa,
This is the
right?
world we live in. This,
Um,
um, if I can throw that in, remember perhaps Obama's pivot to Asia.
yeah.
He famously came in after sort of not, the speech he gave in Cairo was so beautiful. It was so promising about cultural respect, mutuality, and somehow eye to eye, and we can make this work out.
Mhm.
Uh,
But in that sense, that was going beyond the Monroe Doctrine.
it was lies. It was just,
Okay.
it was pretextual. It was pretextual sort of discursive distraction from the reality of what they've done and have been doing in the Middle East, in the
You,
West Asian zone area of influence.
you know that one of the things that I try to do on with dystopian mass is to be very structural in the understanding.
Hmm.
Okay, so that if Obama said that, we're kind of more interested in figuring out why he said that structurally, what role that plays, right?
Just a
Um,
second.
um,
Why he said the speech
one,
in Cairo or the
no, no, 1 second, but I want to
the
come
preach?
back to really
Finish
coming
them.
back to the Monroe Doctrine, which you were
Hmm.
talking about,
Hmm.
because basically the Monroe Doctrine was saying, look, the United States is saying, this is our region. Nobody else should be coming in here and interfering in this region, right? And then I was going to highlight the fact, okay, and then you actually have extended what is understood as the Monroe Doctrine, right?
Hmm.
In terms of American influence to
Hmm.
actually control, to extend to parts of sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes.
Okay. And I think that's interesting. And I am going to extend it also in the other direction, because I'm going to have to ask the question, why did the United States have a base on Guam, right? Why did it
Mm.
have Pearl Harbor? Why does it have um, Hawaii?
Yes.
And why is it so interested in what used to be Formosa, Taiwan,
We've had that in one of our earlier sessions where I
right?
learned a lot from you, I have to say, about what Taiwan actually means to um, to the U.S. And why they continue to support Taiwan and what chances Taiwan has to survive in the world we live in right now with China and the people in Taiwan, if I understand correctly, still interested
Yeah.
in Chinese unity.
Yeah. But
It,
no, because of what you're talking about, I don't want to. I want to keep it focused
yes,
on
all
this
right.
whole idea of, because what you just highlighted there was one, Monroe Doctrine
Mm-hmm.
as as almost the proto pattern of the of American power. So
Yes.
it has these zones of influence, and the zones of influence have expanded, right?
Hmm. And
Okay, yeah, hmm
and actually, you remember in the beginning I said that the way I think about this is always asking the question, what is this a part of? And this approach allows us to see what is the Monroe Doctrine a part of. The Monroe Doctrine itself is a
hmm
part of this the US's doctrine of global preponderance. They have a doctrine in which the entire planet has been compartmentalized. And if you go to CENTCOM, uh, they have a website, I believe, you will find that that the United States have an operational subdivision of the planet into different regions where they have US PACOM for the Pacific theater, US EUCOM, EUCOM for the European region. They have US Central Command for what we call Central Asia, Western Asia. Um, and they have AFRICOM, US AFRICOM. So it's not that it's a new thing. It is that there is a compartmentalization of the entire globe into areas and zones of acquisition, zones of control. And this conversation reminds me of a contextual detail. We will get to the Venezuela point, but contextually, I think his name was P.M. Barnett. A couple of years ago, a book was circulating in political science, geopolitics circles by a P.M. Barnett. Um, and that book was about zones that were excluded from US direct interest, zones that were excluded from US global control. And
hmm
that main zone was actually Africa.
hmm
Africa was depicted in PM Barnett's um, map as somehow a dark hole, you know, in the global area of control. And his definition of area of control was the areas of planet Earth where we have immediate um, economic sway and potential immediate military access.
hmm
And that's the way that map looked. And it was marketed to the world as the Pentagon, the Pentagon's new map of the world. So there are these two maps that, if speaking of Venezuela's position in the in the US's doctrinary perspective on global politics, there are these two maps that come to mind: PM Barnett's map, the
hmm
Pentagon's new map, and the old CENTCOM subdivision of emerging land masses into zones of US control. And then you can rank how much control do they have over uh, the different regions that they've divided the world into.
Okay.
Let me see. Yeah, the Pentagon's new map, Thomas P.M. Barnett. That's his name. The Pentagon's new map, Thomas P.M. Barnett. So I strongly recommend having a look at that.
Okay.
Should we get back to Venezuela?
So I'm gonna make a. Have you read the Hundred Years of Solitude?
I've looked into it. I have looked into it.
Okay. So there's a really good Netflix series
Hmm.
of this. Right? It might not be as books better, but it's good.
Hmm.
Okay. So by Hundred Years of Solitude by Garcia Marquez. You know,
Yes.
and I recommend because he looks at that of some of the social and political and military consequences of that Monroe Doctrine in a story that's not centered upon that, but centered upon Latin American life,
Mm.
right? through the life of a family and
Mm.
across generations.
I
And
Yeah.
I think it gives some really interesting perspectives on this, which are tangent, which are more centered on the lives of people, right? And you can imagine how it would affect the lives of people.
You see, now my mother, who at some point might tune into this, might find out that I've only looked into it because she's been telling me to actually read that book for quite a while. After she turned me onto the open veins of Latin America, uh,
Mm-hmm.
you see, which I feel like there are two schools of uh, non-experts on
Mm-hmm.
Latin America. You see, they're the open veins of Latin America experts in quote unquote. I'm being a little
Mm-hmm.
facetious here. And then there's the 100 Years of Solitude people. And I'm the open veins group. I haven't really read 100 Years of Solitude,
Yeah,
but
so I think I really recommend it, and as a series, it's a good watch, especially over the holidays. Yeah,
so it's been made a movie of them.
yeah, it's been made a series. It's a good series. Yeah.
So this has given me the
Um.
opportunity. Yeah.
Okay. So sorry. Within that now, so basically, within that, what's going on with Venezuela? I don't know if you've been looking at Counterintuitive's comments, because Counterintuitive has brought in this idea, which I was not available, called fossil capital, without which no modern economy or technological society will function. It hardly matters then who is invading and who is ruling. And in talking about um, that, said, are you gentlemen aware of the term fossil capital, the core devotion of every nation that deals with fossil fuels? What makes for common devotion between America, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Russia, Canada, and China? So basically, what's being said here is that the economies which are centered around this um, this this resource, right? This resource is technologically necessary. Then what emerges is what emerges is a common logic,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially with regard to access, management, and protection of the resource,
Mm, mm, mm,
right?
mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And a classic, right? Are if you're in that industry, the things like the standards of pipe dimensions,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
The standards for of pipe alloys, etc. Right?
mm-hmm,
The regardless of what you'll find that they'll find them similar, in whether in the Soviet Union or elsewhere. And part of the reason is precisely this, right? It is that what emerges is a very pragmatic way of aligning of interest
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
without alignment of interest.
Yes, yes, and that
Have
is
I got that right? Counterintuitive.
so.
Okay. So where I'm coming back, so I'm coming back in and going, okay, so for Venezuela,
Mm-hmm.
right? What's going on?
The thing is, Venezuela is ranked first in gold. Not many people talk about that in Latin America. It's not the global
Mhm,
leader, but in Latin America, it is a leader in gold reserves.
mhm,
If not the first, it's among the first three.
mhm,
In lithium, which the world's richest neo-Nazi and alt-right neo-Nazi was Zion-Nazi, and the only
mhm,
reason I hesitate to use that word is because it puts you straight in the crosshairs of the secret services of the moment in 2025. But he is a
mhm,
Zion-Nazi because his grandfather was a Nazi. He is a neo-Nazi because he does his grandfather's ideology. So lithium If he were a vampire, he would be a lithium addict. So where lithium bubbles, this former
Mhm.
employee of the U.S. executive branch will have his sights on. Venezuela is the third uh, uh, largest lithium holder on this planet, and other resources that we have to mention simply:
So you're saying
cobalt.
oil, gold,
Oh yeah,
lithium.
oh yeah, oil reserves. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves leader, with more than Saudi Arabia, with I think it's 300 billion barrels. And so I just mentioned these just so that we hear them. I am not in the habit of regularly repeating the names of these strategic minerals, but
Mhm.
as we are moving into the years from 2000 to 2005, 10, 15, 20, 25, as the militarization increases, the renaming of the Department of Defense or Department of War, we begin to understand, as you like to put it, that the resource scarce, the resource stripped regions of this world that happen to also be militarily in the NATO alliance with 1,002 to 1,300 billion US dollar expenditure in military affairs annually, that these
Mhm.
are the actors uh, clustered in the OECD group very often, that these are the actors that lack these resources and will now start sprawling out militarily, predictably so, into those regions, including Venezuela, which is just an early sort of tactical decision that Washington has made, that the Pentagon has made, that CENTCOM has made, Central Command in the Pentagon, that we're going to go for the resources. And Venezuela has cobalt, Venezuela has tungsten, Venezuela has zinc, Venezuela has nickel, Venezuela has manganese, Venezuela has iron ore, bauxite, copper, uh, lithium. All of these things that are essential for the technocratic age that the US, with its Stargate project, wants to be the leader in, with 500,
Mhm.
what was it, $1 billion investment. Uh,
Mhm.
it wants to establish itself as the leader in the technological domain, and it needs all the resources it can get to actually contend against. And just to close it off, wrap it off nicely, again, what is the tension that I'm describing here between the resource avarice and desire of the U.S. and the resource availability in Venezuela? Just two sentences. I'll hand it to you. What is that a part of? That is a part of the greater, larger competition between China and the U.S. for uh, these resources, where China has enough, but China has built the infrastructure intelligently in a trade system to exchange these without using the friction of warfare. So Venezuela is just one of the first big victims of a strategic decision that the US has made to go in with warfare to get these things instead of trading, as China has preferred to announce to the world with its one belt, one road initiative from a couple of years ago.
So I wanted to just opinion what you were saying
Mm,
in some real facts, right?
mm,
Venezuela has about 18% of the global oil reserves.
it's unbelievable.
Okay.
Unbelievable. Uh,
Okay.
just a question to the audience. When did you hear about this? Because for some reason, throughout all of my higher learning, it was Saudi Arabia. And then at some point, it popped up that the US had kept from the public view that it had even more oil reserves than Saudi Arabia. I don't know if, but I
Yes,
was
because
surprised.
but
I learned
but
this late.
if you're a student of the Second World War,
Mm, mm,
right, you'll see that really the part of what they had to do in the Second World War was actually to protect Venezuelan oil shipping
mm.
from the U-boats. That's why the U-boats were all the way down there.
How unsurprising.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
here's another one that in terms of iron ore,
Hmm.
Venezuela simply has the richest concentration of iron ore on the face of the earth.
Look at that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gold, it's one of the top producers of gold in the region. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another one here is that it has significant reserves of bauxite, diamonds, and coal.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So bauxite is what you made up aluminium from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And if you're producing enough aluminium, then etc., or once you're processing these kinds of minerals, then there are certain strategic minerals which come at scale.
Mm.
So in terms of processing bauxite, if you process enough, like every 100,000 of tons of bauxite, I think you get like a gram of gallium or something like that, right? So you get you have these possibilities which only emerge at scale.
Mm.
Okay, so the lithium, graphite, etc. at present in Venezuela that is being exploited by
Mm.
Indian mining companies,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
American
Mm-hmm.
ones. Okay,
Yes.
so I thought that would help you, and then you've got things like cassiterite and so on, or other really rare critical minerals
Mm-hmm.
which are present in Venezuela.
So I'd like to add some data to that I
Mhm.
sort of prepared in the last week. If we want to look at the estimated total monetary value of Venezuela's mineral wealth, just to
Mhm.
have an idea what the booty would be, what the bounty would be of conquest, we're talking of 24 trillion US dollars in oil reserves, $24 trillion. We're talking $608 billion gold reserves. We're talking $1.5 trillion iron ore reserves. We're talking $120 billion bauxite reserves. We're talking about $100 billion lithium reserves. It's a total of 26 trillion US dollars that is animating and pulling the white supremacist, technocratic authoritarians into abandoning traditional discursive diplomacy with
Mhm.
Venezuela and sending their warships and sending undercover operatives to Colombia to destabilize the neighboring country, Venezuela, gradually. So
Mhm.
there are operations afoot right now. It's not just the several dozen people that have been killed in their fishing boats off the coast without judicial appraisal of what it is they're being accused of. So this is the U.S. undercutting, undermining their own principles of legality and due process, um, because we're talking about 26 trillion US dollars.
Okay, so I will that throughout this period that we would call the period in the dominance of the Monroe Doctrine,
Mm-hmm.
um, the USA has not been it has revealed many of its principles, right? And and which principles must subordinate legal realities,
Mm, mm.
right? And it has been consistent in that. So structurally, I'm not going to listen to your spiel. I'm going to look at what you did,
That's it.
right?
That's it.
Because that's a better predictor of what you will do.
Absolutely. And speaking of predictor of what you will do and predictor of what is to come, if this is, I'll gladly stand corrected. But this is what I've been observing. You know, Venezuela wasn't really on my radar as a as a scholar, as a student,
Mhm.
it kind of tumbled onto my reading list one day in the newspaper when I think it must have been 2002. Around that time, something Chavez had been elected. Um, I'm digging in my memory now, but I just want to sort of bring this little anecdote in. Is that about 23 years ago or something like that? I was suddenly informed by a colleague in the office I worked uh, at university that, oh, there's something like a coup going on in Venezuela. And I realized I had never paid attention to Venezuela in my life. Okay, I was 22, but you know, what's going on in Venezuela? Oh, there's a coup going on. Chavez is about to be kicked out, I think. Co- Correct me if I'm wrong on the date. Huh? And then I didn't pay much attention to it. I said, okay, that doesn't sound good. Coups happen. Let me see. And a few cycles of information later, it was said the coup was unsuccessful. And the conversation then became why wasn't around me was why wasn't it successful? And I remember that the people around me who were much more knowledgeable about Latin America and Venezuela at that time were talking about the different variables that made it a failure. And Chavez's personality was one, but Chavez's policies, uh, even though they were criticized for being sort of crony politics and politics of wasteful, economically unwise expenditure for social programs and marred by corruption, etc. They said there's an ideological programming of the population. That's what they called it, going on about their social rights, about their rights as a population to themselves have access to their wealth and their minerals, about anti capitalism, about anti imperialism, that the population was being educated and was being made um, literate, literate about this in this discourse. And a second thing that stuck with me from listening to why the coups failed, and I find that has been a consistent factor in that theater of operations, in that conflict arena, um, which is Venezuela, is that the military seems to have stood by the government loyally. And it's my understanding that whatever the US wants to do in Venezuela stands and falls, succeeds or fails, with whether they can flip the military around to
Mhm.
supporting their plans of acquiring these $26 trillion of wealth that they want to keep to themselves and use to fuel and funnel their uh, uh, um, their economy.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's basically a takeaway that I came into this conversation with, is if the Venezuelan army tilts and falls, if there are turncoats in there, then Trump will succeed in expand and in turning Venezuela into what I'm struggling to find the military success of the US right now. I wanted to say into an Iraq, but
Chile,
was it Ch- Chile? Thank you. It's
old
regionally
Chile,
even
Pinochet.
so, Pinochet's Chile. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. That's probably where this thing is going in an optimistic lens from their point of view, and in a pessimistic perspective, it might be going to, and I've said this, into becoming for the US, to the US, what Afghanistan became to the Soviet Union.
Well,
There's a
what?
positive prognosis and a negative prognosis.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing about this one is really, um, for me, is really beginning to become literate
Mm,
or having a capacity to read what is going on
mm,
for especially for the audience within Venezuela. Okay,
within
and
Venezuela. Mm,
yeah, I would like to add another layer because again, we haven't really dealt with the Splinternet.
oh yeah.
We've got the Splinternet and the death of globalism, which is not getting dealt with. But this is really interesting,
Hmm.
um, um, because Venezuela is one of the earlier places that is colonized by the Spanish,
Mm,
and um, it as a lot as a and the habit of the Europeans is that okay, they start on a map and they draw a picture, right,
mm,
regardless of the realities on the ground. And so Venezuela has very, very, very differing terrain,
mm,
right? And that region. You've got this zone which we call the Guyana Shields, right? Which Venezuela is kind of or parts of Venezuela give the northern boundary towards, which is a geological formation,
mm,
which gives you a subset of the Amazon, right, behind the mountain range. Okay. So
mhm,
you have particular species within that geographic zone that you don't have in the broader Amazon,
mhm,
and so on. Right? It's a subset, and and so that what you've ended up with Venezuela is a land which is geographically very divided
mhm,
and almost impossible to unify. That was part of the problem. Part of the
mm,
problem is that
mhm.
its regional realities, right, especially for conquering colonists,
Mhm.
ended up with warlordism. You're talking about the map of Europe before Napoleon's continental system,
Yes.
right? And so that was basically what was happening in Venezuela,
Mhm.
and and with very little infrastructure to unify the country and or the colony at the time. The other so there were parts in which they pursued German immigration in order to manage the dynamics of the colony, and that failed. Okay, but it means that you have that the population became very very actually very diverse. Sugar, which is one of the main things that they planted, sugar, tobacco. Yeah, I don't think they did coffee. They didn't do coffee. Because the
Mm.
coffee, the place that coffee was naturalized into Latin America was in Guyana,
Mhm.
right, by the Dutch, and then so that if you have the coffee from Guyana and you taste the coffee from Colombia and the coffee from Brazil, you recognize that it's the same strain,
Mm.
right?
Mm. Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, so where am I going? So part of the problem was that in it was a colony that actually running as a colony they were unable to bring together. And after independence, after Simon Bolivar, the same problem was there. This is structural to the state.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
the only way that was going to be solved was by the building of significant infrastructure that was, to unify the country.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm. Mhm.
and you need to take and so with the failure to do that under successive, basically capitalist governments, the only thing that was going to happen was that in itself, that structural need, right, which also was overseen by the American, the era of American dominance, in
Mhm.
which I think that they have been very stupid, and then when the consequences of their short sightedness hit them, they find ideological reasons
Mm-hmm.
for it. But what has happened with Trump is that Trump has dropped the ideological pretenses. So
Exactly.
when I was saying what was what I found interesting about the Trump response is is his his abandonment of the ideological framing of primacy in American policy,
Mm-hmm.
because it means that the strategic policy of the United States is always ideologically centered.
Yeah.
So what becomes legible in terms of theory of strategy is always ideologically led. Okay, and that that is the symbolic um, core which organizes this status was one of it. So what I found, so what happened is that as a result of that, actually, Latin America was forced
Mm.
into socialist policies because quite frankly, especially if you read or look at 100 years of solitude, you
Mm-hmm.
realize that their policies were so they were capitalist policies which had no interest in the infrastructure for the people, the needs, the political future. They were not interested. They were interested in their profits, and they got their profits,
Mm-hmm.
but they also got the backlash
Yes.
and their failure to actually acknowledge that in policy consistently is can only be described as stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling that that has that has dictated the shape of Chinese policy,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
only the because Chinese policy seems designed. It seems designed. If you were going to design a policy that strikes at the heart of the feelings of American um, uh, capitalist business, infrastructural, etc. policy, then it will be the Chinese one.
This is something that we might one day, one of these conversations, have to look into, which is the Chinese geopolitical strategic mind.
Mhm.
From a global domestic politics point of view, uh, one can look into, chess is often used, the grand chessboard, Zbigniew Brzezinski. Chess is often used by Westerners, by Europeans, as the model through which they look at strategy and tactical thought.
You know, I wrote a paper on that, but I haven't published it.
Oh, on applying tactically chess to geostrategy.
No, on the symbolic patterning of Chinese of Chinese, yeah, strategic thought.
The right up there, because I'm with you on that, because I've been looking at that as well. I haven't written much, but I've had this project for a long time that I want to look at the 36 Chinese stratagems and how they relate to the obvious
Okay.
difference in
Right.
Chinese strategic thought at the global geopolitical level. And and I also want to look at the game of Go. I used to play that when I was a kid with my father,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't played it in ages, but I just remember how different it feels to play Go. That you have to think different. It's not like chess. You think different. It's like Aikido. You move different. You're not
Mm-hmm.
punching, you're absorbing and surrounding and inhibiting the other's movement. And
Mm-hmm.
the way you feel when you play Go cognitively, I kind of get triggered in that place a little bit when I
Mm-hmm.
look at the descriptions of what China's doing geostrategically. I'm saying,
Yeah.
this feels like Go to me.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's something that I've been wanting to do for a long time.
Well,
Uh,
for me, I took the route of looking at. Uh, uh, I turned it around. I took a kind of a structuralist Marxist position. So I looked at the material. Um, I looked at the material means of Chinese economy and economics and state building over the centuries,
Mm-hmm.
and and then and then you began to extract symbolic patterns from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
cultural symbolic patterns in the way that the thought is, and then you extended it from there. So it's a
Mm.
slightly different approach. But
Mm-hmm.
okay, so so going back to Venezuela, I mean because of
I have
course.
some. I have
No,
some more
no,
gifts.
I want to go. I want to go straight to something that I think you'd find interesting,
Mm-hmm.
because one of the things that I hadn't known until Trump had mentioned it was that that Venezuela was a narco state. You know, that was a revelation to me. And now that I know that Venezuela is a narco state, um, which you got to perhaps use Colombian paramilitary narco gangs to address, right,
Mm-hmm.
from from inland um, Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
I began to wonder at that, because I think you would know more about that than I do.
Mm.
I had never realized that Venezuela was a narco state. I was quite surprised by that, and I stand educated.
So this is a part of the reading that I wouldn't say it made me laugh, but sometimes when you're reading into things, reading documents, you're a bit dumbfounded by the the contortions that the speech makers make, or the policymakers uh, put themselves to plausibilize their stance. So what we're dealing with right now is that Venezuela is being sold to us for the purposes of creating a pretext, and we've talked about this in the past on this program, that the way governments communicate with the public is always classifiable in the following groups. You have a text that is spoken, and in the text articulated is a pretext, and in the text subdued is a context, and in that text that is presented is a subtext, and then there's a supertext. And these different types of texts that governments use in communicating their objectives to their populations and to witnesses at large, uh, they have varying degrees of veracity, so and accuracy and poignancy for understanding reality. And let's have a look at what's going on right now. Um, there is an old narco trafficking group that had its heyday, according to the literature, in the 1980s and 90s, towards the middle of the 90s. And the US government is currently uh, trying to sell the world that Maduro, the socialist uh, president of the country, actually is not the president of the country, but the CEO of a global narco trafficking system, uh, and therefore the US government has coined the neologism, or the new term, of narco terrorism, in order to link the recent sort of understanding that they have already successfully sold to the world of the legitimacy of a global war on terror, to the
Hmm.
legitimacy, quote unquote, to the legitimacy of fighting narcotic criminality, and taking the fight right to the provider of those narcotics, which is Maduro, linked to a group that had its heyday in the 80s of the last century.
Okay, so then
Nothing. So,
so what are you saying? Are you suggesting that there's an old narcotics group that has managed to continue in its conspiracy across um 4 decades?
so here's the thing. The according to the papers that I've read, and this is where the laughter comes in, this is a brand new concoction to be made palatable, to justify in a pretextual key uh, the slaughter of innocent people in Venezuela. So this is how we're being manipulated. If we can, and you've written copiously about this in the archives of Dystopia Unmasked, if we can dehumanize
Mhm,
the other, if we can otherize human beings by associating them with an irredeemable evil,
mhm,
we then, by that mechanism of mental manipulation, justify, make acceptable, palatable, justifiable, legitimize the murder and slaughter of innocent people because they are drugging our population. And it just, and this is another thing, I've forgotten the new term that is used for this, that these right wing, alt right, neo Nazi discourse people use. It doesn't matter whether what you're saying is true, accurate, verifiable, empirical, or isn't. What matters is, can you rile up the people's libidinal resentment against something or against somebody? And once you've successfully done that, which is what they're doing by making us believe that the entirety of the socialist government in Venezuela is a bunch of criminals that are poisoning the body of the U.S. government.
mhm.
Um, sorry,
On behalf of Iran and Russia.
on the fentanyl, and they're talking about fentanyl being sort of the. Just a second, I'm getting a little bit of a disturbance here. Um, just hold on a second. Unexpected, unexpected disturbance here.
Okay. I mean, guys, I mean, one of the things I would say is that um, these things are, since the United States has an organization called the Department DEA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they publish figures,
Mm-hmm.
right? I find it really interesting that they haven't published a document showing the relative flows of drugs from, let's take different parts of the world, or at least Latin America, to the
Mm-hmm.
United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if anybody did that, it would very likely be revealed that it is the Pacific coast that is the most porous to drug infiltration, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
the drugs are landed on the Pacific coast, and so that many of the major drug producers are and transit points are on that side. Counterintuitive was talking about Ecuador,
Mm-hmm.
which is perhaps the world's number one narco state, but also happens to be a major U.S. ally.
Yes. And
Right?
Colombia. And Colombia.
What Colombia? Well, the Colombia was split
Mm-hmm.
on paramilitaries that were funding themselves through narco activities, which it had to fight and is still fighting. Right.
And I'm trying to remember, I am trying to remember the name. I think the name is Elliot. Um, in the first Trump administration, the name will come to me, but the point I'm trying to make is that the Iran Contra affair
Mm,
uh, was a pattern, a model of selling drugs in order to finance military equipment in order to overthrow governments.
Well,
Uh,
and that is what is going on in the Sahel also. It's the same
exactly.
pattern that's present in the Sahel.
Right.
Um, but, yeah.
I want to interject, not interrupt.
Mhm.
Just sort of throw in something to illustrate and underscore what you're saying. Um, in the last 2 years, there's been a conversation about fentanyl flowing into the U.S. through Canada by way of China on the right wing of the discourse field. I don't know whether our audience has picked that up, but if you go into the MAGA bubble and listen to them, I have this principle, which is audiatur et altera pars. I cannot just listen to the people that agree with me. I have to find out what's going on in those spheres as well. And when you listen to
Aren't
them,
you aren't you married?
well, it has to. It is that's how you maintain a good marriage. Is that what you're saying? It is an advisable technique, indeed. I try to apply that all around me. It's ubiquitously. But when it comes to politics, people don't like to do that. But if you dive into the MAGA bubble and you listen to their arguments, you find that there's been a discourse ongoing that fentanyl is coming into the US through Canada and it's China behind it. Well, okay, that's the discourse. How does it relate to empiricism? Hmm. Then it becomes very vague and very fluffy, but there's faith and belief in that discourse. Then you realize that it's been coming. It's a discourse about narcoterrorism in the making. And at the end of that discourse, you always find Russia, China, and Iran. So the narcoterrorism discourse is not just about Venezuela. It is actually about the larger thing, the larger enemies. And here Gaza comes in again. The entire intervention in Gaza, I posit, no, I cannot say entire. At the macro political level,
Hmm.
the purpose of Gaza was to interdict Iranian regional control expansion, to interdict Chinese presence anywhere around the Leviathan oil fields, which have about $530 billion worth of gas, and to keep out Russia out of anywhere near North Africa and West Asia, which I haven't checked in a while what's going on with the former Russian port in Syria.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I think the contract was being renegotiated last I checked. But this is what Gaza was about at that level. It was about keeping China out, keeping Iran down, and keeping Russia out as well. And the Venezuela and the Canada discourse about drug trafficking has been uh, about dehumanizing and denigrating and stigmatizing as the poisoner of the American body politic, China, Iran, and whoever might be behind the fentanyl.
Well,
Um,
what's interesting is that because United States is a polity which is in that schizoid paranoid positioning,
mm, mm,
it means that there are two things that will work well
mm,
for them for political unity. They are one, the
mm,
presence of an external threat, a bad breast, which then allows them to become the good breast.
mm. This is I just want to say to the audience, you have to go to an article in order to real if you haven't read it already. I'm totally sold on this article that Alex wrote, The Hidden Architecture of Politics in the Archives of Dystopia en Masse. I've learned so much from this article. It has restructured my understanding of the human condition. Reading that article from the first to the last word, taking it seriously, taking it by its word, that
Mhm.
it has validity, will equip your understanding of the human condition with a vantage point that is unbelievably valuable. I'm not trying to what's the word here? I'm not trying to gas you, as they say in New York. in the sense,
Yeah.
because I just
I'm gonna have to start wearing a turban because my head's gonna get big.
so,
Yeah.
but the way you put that together with Melanie Klein's angle of in the infancy, in how in the stage of infancy, certain tactics and strategies of negotiating reality are established in the human mind, and then there are some classifications, always heuristic to help us,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
comprehend. Oh, and it's one of the best things, if not the best thing I've read all 2025. I have to tell you that. And that's not because you're my friend.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
It's really good stuff. Good stuff. Like really good stuff.
Yeah. So they're stuck because they're stuck in that schizoid paranoid framing.
Mm,
Then, um, two things: hatred and threat.
mm-hmm,
Hatred and external threat.
mm-hmm.
The external threat allows them. So that's if you look at and if you want to understand this period, look at the period, the post-war period, and McCarthy's.
Mm,
Look at Senator McCarthy,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and his American witch hunt, and read our dear friend, what's his name,
Which one?
who wrote
Oh.
Salem, about the Salem trials, the writer,
Ah, it'll come to me in a second.
screenwriter, what's his name?
It'll come to me in a second. The
He was
Salem
married to
trials. Yes,
Marilyn Monroe.
yes, 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 yes.
He was married to Marilyn Monroe.
It'll come to me. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. Salem trials
Brilliant.
is Oh, we were talking about him the other day.
Yeah.
Mm, 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 mm,
I'm
mm.
going to see if I can find him. Arthur Miller.
Arthur Miller, thank you. Arthur Miller. It wasn't coming to me. Hmm?
Hmm.
Bias issue. Um,
Yeah. Okay. So, oh, thank you, Anurag. Yeah.
Nobody's perfect, Arthur Miller, right?
Uh, 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 um, and I see similarities in my methodology and Arthur Miller's
Mm,
in terms of that um that capacity to drill into the 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 structural and everyday detail,
mm,
and then let things make the let and then let the consequences emerge from
mm.
that. So you realize that no, you think you're making decisions, but it's the structure that has decisioned you,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Um, okay, so in terms of what we're increasingly seeing, I think I'm going to just because I think we have to end. It's now 12 o'clock on my
Mm,
end. It's 1 o'clock on yours. Um, I think one of the things that we're seeing, looking at what you've just said, is okay. So the Americans have this doctrine of a region that they should control,
mm-hmm,
and increasingly across this these 2 centuries, right, almost 2 centuries of Monroe's doctrine, we've just constantly seen the shape of American policy within that region, right? Which intends to extract and not think about the long term consequences of their extraction, and
mm-hmm.
then to deal with the long term consequences of their extraction as a new crisis,
Yes.
right? Um, is that would you say that would be a good summary of what you said?
It is an absolute summary because this is what is going on. This is how
Mhm.
to look at the whole situation. And there is uh, there's something that I'd like to add to that before we wrap up.
Mhm.
Um, it is about who are because this is an aspect that is important. If there is a military confrontation coming, I think on top of what you've summarized now, one has to keep in mind that Venezuela is not standing alone in this. There's a globally I think the demonization through the association with poisoning the body politic of the US throws up two things I'd like to add to the summary, if you allow. One is, in this conversation of the US body politic being poisoned through drugs and Venezuela and Maduro being a key actor in this poisoning process, therefore thereby justifying his elimination. Nobody's ever asking what is being done about the demand for these drugs. And of course, there's a footnote here about Donald Trump's brother's addiction that one could then speak about how uh, it may play a role that Donald Trump has a traumatic experience with addiction because of the loss of his brother in his family to drugs and alcohol or something like that. So he always has this knee-jerk, intense reaction to drugs. I'm not surprised that whoever sold him, Ellison, I think, Abraham Ellison, somebody please check the name of that guy for me, Abraham Ellison, Abraham Elliott or something like that. The guy who was in the Iran drug Contra affair, involved in it, and was discredited for it, was in charge under the first Trump administration for Latin America and Venezuela, and I think he still plays a role today. Brett Ellis, the name will come to me. And the point is, these people have managed to sell and reheat this old d- narco trafficking terrorism in the new package of narco trafficking terrorism for Trump, and have connected it with his trauma in ways that maybe have made him more easily pliable to accepting this
Elliot
discourse.
Abrams.
Elliot Abrams. This is,
Elliot Abrams.
yes, the most sleazy, some of the sleazy sleaze of sleaze bags. You just have to look at his track record. This is not me being ad hominem. It's just his track record. It's just sleaze start to
But
finish.
and I would say, because structuralism is my thing.
Yes, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
and what I would say is that
Yes.
the structural um, conditions
Mm,
produce. Okay, the structural positions are revealed because they show the symbolic commitment.
mm,
Okay, and so
mm.
so then because of that symbolic commitment, then those structural conditions give life to ecosystems, which give life to their perpetuation.
Yes.
Right. So and that's why I like structuralism, because everybody is going, okay, well, maybe it's this. This is the reason. This one is the one guilty for that. And da 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 da. No,
That's
right. That's not useful for us at a point like this.
And I'd like to throw in the word that I like to use to anchor me in what you've just said, which is actor invariant structure. Structure is actor invariant. Slavery was a social structure, and it didn't matter in which of the 215 years you were born and when you passed away in those 250 years of entrenched transatlantic slavery. It was around you, it was there before you were born, it will be there after you're gone, unless something happens and it
And I'm
doesn't.
still dealing with some of the familial and psychological consequences
Precisely,
of that
precisely,
structure, right?
precisely, precisely. Actor
And
invariance.
the social consequences,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So,
Including okay, all right, okay, guys, listen. You've got. I know that you've got you've got some responsibilities which you have to take care of.
it's true, but
Uh,
I'd like to leave our audience with one further reflection. So, one is, in this narco uh, drug traffic terrorism discourse, the question never is asked what is being done about the demand for the drugs, which would recalibrate the discourse towards healing the people within the
But
country's
I
borders.
would, well, I don't think, again,
Mm.
right? You have to look at the structural necessity of
Two.
drug addictions,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
You have to look at those structural dynamics before
Hmm.
you enter into the zone where you're rushing to heal people,
Thank you.
right? Because the greatest
Mm.
the greatest healing in that situation is to disrupt and destroy that structural commitment to such an
Mm.
order, right? But
Mm.
then it means that there are other things that will have to be dealt with because, um, when you're dealing with an ecosystem, when you move a tree, it doesn't only affect the trees, right? It doesn't only affect the immediate vicinity.
Mm.
And so it is the lack of that kind of connected teaching thinking, which is a depressive mode of thinking that the US structurally lacks. And as a result, right? I don't know if anybody's seen the film Running Man.
Mm. Mhm,
Right.
mhm, mhm.
There's a redo. There's another Running Man out, and it's worth a look. Okay. All right, guys, and thank you. No, thank you guys for coming along and yeah.
Should I throw in the last point? I would just like to leave our people with it, which is remember that Russia, Iran, China, and Belarus have been providing Venezuela with armament systems that are land, sea, and air based. You can look it up. I don't have the numbers rightly available, but look it up. Venezuela isn't toothless in this very moment. And
No, and I think that that is the structure of modern war,
uh,
right?
mm,
And the kinds of, because as we've moved into a multipolar reality,
mm,
nations have options, right? Before
mm,
they have options,
mm,
and some of these actors are not new. I mean, the Chinese were training African revolutionaries
mm,
and supporting them, and the Russians the same in
mhm,
Latin America.
mhm,
Okay, and Venezuela was gave them another foothold.
mhm,
The Russians, at that point, the Soviets under communism,
mm,
then the Soviet state fell.
mm.
Okay, and American schizoid paranoid strategy required the Russians to re-emerge um, an as an enemy.
Yes.
Okay, and they remain committed to that. And so what you're looking at is the logic of proxy war, which is not new, right? It's not new. The logic of proxies.
Mm,
If you and the thing for you to become a proxy is that you have to have resources, right?
mm,
Because everybody, counterintuitive was talking about the cannibalism of capitalism. I
mm.
say, yeah, in terms of war, everybody always looks at resources because wars cost resources,
Yeah.
whatever their ideological differences, except in the case, no, even, yeah, no, it's always resources. Okay, all right.
Thank you
So,
very much, Alex.
Venezuela um, has is emerged as almost a Bolivarian socialist militarist state, right?
It's coming. It's
No,
coming.
well, no, that's how it was because and usually in states that are so geographically separate with regional identities and so on, the only way that you get them unified is through something like national service,
Mm.
right? So
Yes.
that's how So the point here is that beyond all of the ideological noise, you have to look at the structural drivers that have driven that situation to where it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, it's 12:11. Well, it's time to go. Yeah, guys,
And thank you,
it's
thank
a
you so
pleasure.
much for thank you so much for the conversation today, Alex. I hope our group is
Mhm.
satisfied. And I'll leave you with one thought. How
Yeah.
close is the Panama Canal to Venezuela? And is it a good idea to attack a country that close to the Panama Canal?
Well, it it's in terms of approaches from the canal and
Mm,
America, it doesn't bother that, right?
mm,
Puerto Rico is so Puerto Rico has been held to guard its kind of l- lower approaches, right?
mm, mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm,
the when the shipping comes through the canal, generally it goes up. What is strategic for the United States is what goes up.
mm-hmm,
Okay. Now, on in terms of the transit through the Caribbean Sea and going down,
mm-hmm.
they're fine. That doesn't affect that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Because I was wondering, is that a neuralgic point that Venezuela might want to mess with to delve a blow
It,
to
it, it
U.S.?
is Colombia. If you were doing that, it's Colombia,
Mm.
right? Because remember, Panama is historically part of Colombia,
Yes, that part. Yes.
right? And at some point, it is very likely that the Colombians will reclaim it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that so anyway, all right.
Thank you so much, and
My pleasure.
talk to you soon.
Okay. I look forward to it.